Hey, folks, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been subscribing to my channel. I love seeing those numbers go up. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. And I also want to say that if any of you want to write to me directly by email, you could do so at everylittlething@att.net. Every Little Thing is the name of my syndicated Beatles radio show. And also, I'd love to get some comments and suggestions from you of things that you'd like for me to do here on the channel, or if you'd like to comment about what your favorite things are that I've done, whether they're Fab Five shows, number 9 Dream shows, who you'd like to see me interview. Here on this channel, I interview podcasters, authors, musicians, people who have worked with the Beatles. Any ideas that you might have, please write to me at everylittlething@att.net. All right, my guest this time out is Mike Miller. Mike is the leader of the band One Sweet Dream, and that's
Hello,
an
people.
all. What's that? I heard you singing.
Come on, people. Woo, yeah. Oh, Paul, I taught you everything you know. Woo. Little Richard for you fans out there.
Mike is the Paul McCartney, if you haven't guessed, of a McCartney tribute band called One Sweet Dream. And they've been delighting audiences now for well over 10 years in the New England area, based out of Connecticut, but they also play in other states, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. And I've known Mike all that time, even longer. And he is a huge Beatle fan, loves Paul. I thought we'd talk a little bit about his band. And Mike has offered to do, since Paul apparently is his favorite Beatle, I certainly hope so at this point,
Of
uh,
course.
a number 9 Dream show on Paul. And just so you know, we're going to be tackling Mike's top 3 McCartney solo albums. That means anything post Beatles, Wings solo albums, Fireman albums, if he wants. Top 3 McCartney bass lines. And that could be bass lines from any time in his career, Beatles and solo. And then I thought this would be kind of interesting. Top 3 songs Mike would like to see Paul do live of his own original songs that he's never done live before. This can go back to his Beatle days, anything from his solo career or post Beatles. All right. So Mike, first of all, welcome to my
Sounds like
channel.
fun. Thank you. This sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Although
Yeah.
to answer all of those topics easily, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. I'm probably going to be shuffling the answers in my mind as we go along. So we'll get there.
For a lot of people, even the biggest fans, they don't normally think in terms of, gee, what are my favorite bass lines? Or, what songs would I like for him to do live? I mean, off the top of my head, I could do it, but then I'm not your average person. Pardon the pun. But anyway, One Sweet Dream, tell us about that, how it all got started. Did you always want, since you were a Beatle fan from early on, to start an all McCartney band?
Was never my intention actually to get it to that point. I'm so glad it got to that point. I started the McCartney persona thing long time ago, back in the 80s, just entering contests as, if you remember, there used to be a show on called Putting on the Hits. It was all about lip syncing. In the mid 80s, lip sync was like a big fad. So all of these nightclubs, they were having lip sync contests. And I actually, of all people, I was into Billy Joel back then into the 80s. Tell her about with the shades and stuff.
Right.
So I entered these contests, not as McCartney, but as Billy Joel. But that same year we had the Michael Jackson and McCartney duets. There was a Michael Jackson impersonator at one of these contests. So at that time, The Girl Is Mine was off a Thriller. Say, Say, Say was, off Pipes of Peace. And when I walked in without the shades, without the, not in costume, this Michael Jackson, who I'm like very, very good friends with to this day. Unlike the real Jackson and McCartney ended up, me and this guy, his name is Joby Rogers. Actually, he goes all over the world. We're like very, very close friends still. But he just approached me and he's like, "Oh man, you know, you look like Paul McCartney when you don't have to shave. You got to do the Girl Is Mine with me. Can you do the Girl Is Mine with me?" So I'm like, "Well, let me learn it, and like I'll let you know next week or something." So as it turned out, that particular week, I didn't win the contest as Billy Joel, so you could always come back the following week, you know, as somebody else.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. So I came back the following week, and it was just first place prize right off the bat, you know, and the applause was incredible, and we moved on. Like we stuck together, and we went from club to club, winning contest to contest. Eventually, we got the attention of the producers of the actual show, putting on the hits, and they held an audition at the Holyoke Mall in Massachusetts. Thousands and thousands of people watching, and there we were on this little stage, surrounded by all these people, and we got it. And then the show got canceled, and we never made it on. But I think somewhere I still have like the newspaper article of us, and you know, and all of that. So from that point, I just started to do these look-alike road shows. Like I assembled some of these look-alikes of artists. We went on the road rather as a contest. We went as a professional show, lip sync look-alike show to clubs. I did that for a few years. That fueled a local access cable show that I came up with based on that. I did with 5 years, called it We All Shine On. I had to give it some kind of a Beatle title, you know. I called it We All Shine On, although it was just music, lookalikes of the music of the time. Like there was me and Jackson, but we had Whitney Houston and George Michael. So it was like that mid 80s period. And I started to get approached by agencies that just assumed that I did it for real. And they were giving me offers to play in casinos and stuff. And I would just laugh it off, going, "Oh, no way, you know, I just, this is just for fun." And, you know, I never took it seriously. And then there was one offer when the agent said, "That's too bad because I could have gotten you $5,000 in 1 week at a casino in Portland, Oregon." And I went, "What?" Like, are you people serious about this? So
no, wait. Just let me try and understand this. When you're imitating Paul here, you're not really singing then. You're still just lip syncing.
Right.
And they're willing to pay you that much just to do that?
No, if I really sang and played.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why I turned them down. But I just kept, the offers just kept on coming. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, maybe this isn't a goof. Maybe there's something really into this. And because I was always just intimidated, like I could never like play the bass or really try to be like him and, you know, and stuff. But I just, I don't know, I just changed my attitude about it. I saw a used, I think it was a Japanese Hofner 67 in a used guitar shop, I think in Shelton, Connecticut or Derby. And there it was hanging for like $199 and $199, that's it. And it looked close enough to a Hofner, like at least to start on and work on and practice on. So I got it. And, you know, back in those days, I'm talking like now we're in like the mid 90s. There was no internet where you could just go on as far as learning a song and just watch an instruction and follow it and be that easy. I had the CD player, playing the CDs with the headphones on and listening to the bass notes and trying to find them on the bass. And I can't read music. Paul can't read music. So I would write down I could write down what they call tablature, the bass notes. So I would find it where it is on the bass. I would write it down on paper. And I would start with the most easiest songs ever to play on bass, like Let 'Em In.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. You know?
Yeah.
Or Let Me Roll It, you know. Dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun. You know, so
Right.
I would start with that. And it just the more that I accomplished it, the more confidence I gained. So the more confidence I gained, that had me move on to more difficult songs,
Right.
you know. And I felt better about it. And then it just all kind of, it just kind of came together, you know.
Did you ever sing prior to this, or you just learned that by yourself?
Um, Not professionally, like you know what though, I always uh, whenever I just played the music, when it was in, if it was in the car or in the house, I would sing along with it, and I would try to sing like Paul.
Hmm.
But see, my whole life, even through school, I've always done impressions. I've done impressions of my teachers. I've done. I love Rich Little. I used to watch him. I used to try and impersonate Jimmy, Jimmy Stewart. You know, so I've always done impersonations as a kid. It's something that just came automatically to me.
Hmm.
So even not intending to, when I'm playing a Beatles song, if like in my life is playing, I'm singing along and I'm trying to sound like John. If a Ringo or a McCartney song is playing, I'm singing along with it and I'm trying to sing like Ringo. They're gonna put me in the movies. I'll be singing it like that while the record's playing.
Okay.
I'm trying to sing it like the artist. So what's hard about McCartney though is he's got so many different voices and
Sure.
inflections.
Uh-huh.
You know, he's got the sweet little teddy boy Elvis tone. He's got the screaming little Richard. He's got, and so it's hard. And I'll be the first to say that I can't get them all down. You
Hmm.
know, there's some that I think I could sound like them. There's some that I think that it sounds like me trying to sound like them. And you know, and then there's some where I did where it like maybe you should have chosen like another song to do or something, you know.
Hmm.
But
But you know,
it all came together by accident, yeah.
it's a whole other world to give a concert and be on stage for an hour to 2 hours and continuously sing, and to have the chops to build it
And
up
be the
to be,
bass player.
yeah,
And be the bass player. And
right,
it's not easy to play bass and sing at the same time, let me tell you.
right. It's just a matter of getting used to it. I don't know how bass players do it or drummers do it, to drum and sing at the same time. So,
You know what I had to do as far as that goes is I have to break it up in pieces. Like instead of taking like the whole song and doing the vocals with the bass at the same time, I would just learn the bass first, try and learn it enough where I don't have to, where I could just play it without thinking about it. If I
mm,
could play it without thinking about it, then I could concentrate on the vocals,
right.
But if I just divide my attention up unequally between the two, that's when things get messed up, because I'm not 100% with the vocal and I'm not 100% with the bass. So there's going to be like like a little bit of a train wreck there at some point.
Hmm.
It's hard. You find out as you go along, you have to be really self-disciplined. Oh my gosh, because sometimes you just spend hours on one song. And when you think you got it down at the end of the day, and you'll hear the song maybe a week later in the car, and you'll hear something that you didn't hear when you were going over it. And it's
Mm,
like, oh, and then you got to go back.
right.
But, you know, but the
Mm.
end result makes it worth it. I just feel blessed and honored, like beyond belief.
So give my viewers an idea of what a set list would look like in a One Sweet Dream show. Do you keep it mainly solo? Do you put more Beatles than solo? Is it a 50-50 mix? How do you decide from show to show what you want to do?
I try to keep it 50-50. Uh, it never really happens to be the way I originally, like when I first started this, uh, McCartney had a lot less music out back then, but I would kind of make out my list to make it evenly. I'm like, okay, I've got like uh, 10 Beatles, I'm going to do 10 Wings and 10 solo. And that was my original. But when it came time to get shows, a lot of the actual bookings came whenever there was some kind of anniversary going on, the 20th anniversary of Sergeant Pepper. So I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to do that, we have to put more Sergeant Pepper songs in here. So something's got to come out.
Right.
If it's whatever 40th anniversary of Band on the Run, well, if we're tributing this album, we got to put more. Let's put more Band on the Run stuff in there. Okay, some stuff got to come out. So I would say for the most part, though, it's 50-50, but it's really getting harder because he's just keeps coming out with music. I don't know if he's going to be coming out with more music now at this point, but
I
it was
hope so.
much easier to do 50-50 10 years
Yeah.
ago than it is now.
And do you differentiate between Wings and solo? Are they two separate catalogs to you, or is it Beatles and post Beatles?
Um,
Everyone's different in the way they look at it.
yeah,
I could see both points of view.
well, when McCartney got inducted, did he get inducted as with two bands, or was it just Beatles
It
and
was for
solo?
Paul as a solo, Paul for a solo career encompassing everything. So
Okay.
that meant
See, that's
Wings
hard.
too. Yeah.
That's hard because he really was with another band. But I think for the most part, like if you look at the compilations that come out,
Hmm.
like I've yet to see a best of Paul McCartney that doesn't have Wing stuff on there, like from
Right.
1981 on. So even any like best of Paul McCartney like starts with the Wings. I think that's the general uh, intake of that. That solo came after Beatles. Whereas I think technically he went from one band to another band and then went solo.
Well, the first McCartney album is a solo album,
I know. I was
and
asking
and
about that.
and Ram was listed as Paul and Linda,
Maybe a
and then from
precursor to
there,
Wings.
Denny Sywell was on Ram. He ended up
Great
joining
interview
Wings.
with Denny Silo, by the way. I watched that for the 50th anniversary of the Ram tribute album.
Uh-huh.
When he had died. That was great.
Oh, thank you.
One
That
to
was with
top one.
Fernando Perdomo, and they both
Yeah.
co-produced it together. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Denny Sywell is an incredible guest, and he still has, thankfully, some very sharp memories of that time,
Right.
which is now, we're talking 50 years practically. Well, Ram is certainly, but yeah, I mean, without really making this a whole other show, which it is to itself, because some people don't consider Wings to be a true band. I do. I think Paul really tried to establish Wings as a band to the point where when they started, they were just Wings. They weren't Paul McCartney and Wings, they were just
Right.
Wings,
Yeah.
and probably to help boost sales around the
Yeah, I
time
think
of Red
so
Rose
because of
Speedway.
wildlife.
Yeah. And Wildlife was not a flop by any means. I just did a show on this, because it still went top 10. And in most markets around the world, it was a top 5 album. That's not a flop, certainly in my estimation. But, I could talk for hours about this whole idea of, Paul, when the band gave interviews, the different members were asked a question that was done intentionally so that it wasn't all just spotlight on Paul or Paul and Linda.
Yeah, the
You know,
songs.
early on, the other members got a few songs live. Denny
Mhm.
Lane got 5 songs live during Wings
Yeah.
Over America. It wasn't all just Paul McCartney.
Right,
Yes, he
right,
was the
right.
leader. Everybody knew he was the leader, but you can still have a leader in a band and it's still a band.
Right, right, right.
But anyway,
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it.
yeah. So yeah, you've been going strong now with One Sweet Dream. Well, up to COVID when that hit.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you noticed that when people come to see your band that they want to hear deeper stuff, album cuts, or are they just happy to hear the hits? So they all just want to hear Band on the Run and Live and
Um,
Let Die and the classics that you know that Paul does all the time.
yeah. Well, I know Paul thinks he likes to, he asked himself if he was going to a McCartney concert, what songs would he want to hear?
Mhm.
Um, but um, when I get into the deeper cuts of, of course, the reaction isn't as plentiful as the hits. It might even be like that at one of his shows. But what I like is sometimes I do a meet and greet afterwards, is when we happen to do a deep cut and maybe it didn't get as much of applause
Mhm.
as a big hit would. But when you have that one or two or three people come up to you and say, I couldn't believe you did that song. That
Uh-huh.
just made the whole show, and that was unbelievable to hear. You never hear that, and I'm like,
Right.
thank you very much, because I really wanted to be an honest from the start. I wanted this to be an honest tribute. Like I know people want to hear everything they hear on the radio, but you can hear it on the radio, and his fan base is so much more than what you hear on the radio.
Hmm.
You know, so like I really mean to reach the true fans. And sometimes you'll see him set it up if at one of his shows, if like if he goes into too many people like one time ago, okay, this is for the real fans out there,
He said the
which
Wings fans, and that
the
wasn't a
Wheels
Wings
fan,
album.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like he wants to uh, explain it before he does it because there
Mhm.
might be some people that won't know what it is or something. I don't know, but I love doing an even mix.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly tell you that for me, the big jolt I get is when you go deeper, and you know that from
Right?
me. And it's the same thing when I do my radio show, Every Little Thing, and
Yeah.
I play a deeper cut. I'm not playing a hit. I'm playing something that you'd never hear anywhere else unless it was
Right.
a Beatles show where they do go deep.
Yeah.
And yeah, because we were at the Fab Four Music Festival in Connecticut last year, and you were
Mhm.
doing a tribute to Ram.
Yeah.
So you were playing Eat at Home, and it's yeah, this is great.
That has a great bass line. See, I've been thinking that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Ah.
Didn't you go from Uncle Albert into Smile Away, just like on the record?
Yeah. It
That
was
was
the first
very
time we ever
cool.
did Smile Away. I want this COVID to stop because we had a lot of fun doing that one,
Uh-huh.
and I like to even see if I can get some kind of a fuzz box to put on the bass to give the bass that fuzz sound
Uh-huh.
that it has. You
Uh-huh.
know, but that was a lot of fun. And that's what I'm talking about. If Ram wasn't turning 50 during that festival, we wouldn't have. Yeah, what did we do? 6 songs, I think, maybe. I think, and 4 of the 6 were Ram songs or something like that. Because
Yeah.
or three, but that was because of the anniversary. But
Right.
normally, it would be more spread out from his career.
Plus, we should explain that at these festivals, you're not the only act there. So you're one
Well,
of
that's it too. You're on
many
a
acts.
time.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
only have like a half-hour set. So, but
And,
even
and you
still,
can't do what the other bands are playing either. You have to make sure of that
mm,
that's
right.
just something that they do there.
So let's hope that your band gets some new dates pretty soon and that COVID clears up. And you
We're
know,
more than ready to go. I'm telling you. PaulieSongs.com if you want to check it out.
hmm And I'll
Uh,
include that in my description box, for people that want to follow you and the band. But for now, let's just talk about Paul and what your favorites are. And we're going to start with your top three McCartney solo albums. When I say that, it's all post Beatles. So if you want it to be Wings, that's fine. If you want it to be, the Fireman, that's okay. The only criteria is that it can't be a compilation. It can't be a greatest hits.
right, yeah.
So what would be your top three, Mike?
Wow. Um, I had a feeling something like this was coming, but at least you were giving me three. Most people say, "What's your favorite?"
Uh,
I just can't do it. Uh, we usually go three, two, one.
if you want to, sure.
Um, I'm gonna say my number three one. They're all gonna be post Wings.
Okay.
My number three would be Chaos and Creation in the Backyard.
And why so?
Um, the bass on it is really upfront with some of the songs, especially on the beginning of This Hasn't Happened, This Never
This
Happened
never
Before,
happened.
which, my word, I just, sometimes I tear up when I hear that song. That's just one of the most beautiful songs that I've ever heard. And I also DJ, and I've played that at weddings, you know.
Hmm.
Um, the There's a bass line in the beginning of it that but it's a soft piano, and the bass just comes in with boom 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 boom, and then it goes almost into a count for the rest of the song to come in.
Mm-hmm.
By how sometimes when well, let's take Smile Away. Before Smile Away, you hear 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, 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 bam. The bass on this song, This Never Happened Before, it does that. It goes boom, 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 boom. It's down here, it's up here, it's down here. Boom, 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 dang, and then all the other instruments come in. And I never really heard that from a bass in a song before. Most songs, the bass is kind of in the back, just giving that everybody else a lift, like all the guitars and the keyboards. That's usually all in front of the bass, and the bass is just kind of underlining it and giving it a platform. But the bass on that song, and because that's all it is. It's the bass by itself first with the piano, and then everything else comes in. Just blows me away. And the bass is kind of all over the place on some of the songs. Too Much Rain. The arrangements I love. I love Paul's vocals on it. Too much rain. I mean, I just like it. It's just an album, and I like Fine Line. I think it was were there any singles off that album besides
There
Fine
was,
Line?
yeah.
Friends?
Fine
Friends?
Line was the first single.
Right.
I know
And I like
Jenny
that.
Wren
That's
was
a
made
really
into a
good one.
single. Jenny Wren was made into a single, and that was
Jenny Wren.
they really edited down that song as a single. But yeah,
Yeah. Obviously very Beatles-ish, Jenny Wren.
Hmm.
Jenny Wren took me back to the White Album. Any album that I find myself going back to playing every year, those are the albums that I thought of to if somebody asks, what's your favorite? It's like, well, what album do I keep playing all the time? Because sometimes you might get a new album, you'll play it to death when you get it, but then you might not play it for like a couple of years later. You're over it.
Right.
But there's certain albums like Chaos that I just don't get tired of hearing. Flaming Pie is another one. That's my number two.
Mm-hmm.
what I liked about that, again, some Beatles sounds in there. I love his vocals, especially on The World Tonight,
Yes.
when he's especially when he gets into that give it away, hey, hey. And he's kind
Yeah.
of gets that Ram kind of roughness in
Hmm.
his throat, "Way," you know. And
That's a very retro sounding. It's
exactly,
very Wings-ish in a way,
it
The
is,
World Tonight.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that album is just so chock full of hits. You know, it's very poppy, but and it's got a sentimental value. Like that, I never not listened to Calico Skies without being teared up afterwards and thinking of Linda.
Hmm.
You know,
Actually, I think of Linda a lot for Some Days.
some days I was going to go there
Yeah.
next. Yeah,
Yeah. And
but
Calico Skies, it's true. Yeah.
and Beautiful Night with Ringo.
Uh-huh.
You know, when he just comes in at the end, beautiful. And I love the video for that when it gets to that point.
Hmm.
You know, Ringo's always got the little bob head for the Beatles and stuff, but you watch on that song for Beautiful Night when it goes on, he's like, beautiful night. He's like practically dancing, you know, in his seat. And he just looks like he's having a good time and loving it. And I'm just like, that's just a great album. That's my number two. It almost took over my number one, which is a lot of people's number one albums, which is Ram. I guess that's a solo one. You don't want to call that a Wings, I guess, but Ram has always been number one. Always. I've never, Flamin' Pie was the closest that came to getting near that number one spot.
Hmm.
But Ram, I don't know. Can you put your finger on just what is it about that album? I heard it so much growing up, so maybe there's a nostalgia aspect to it. My siblings both had it, so I remember it being played all the time. I remember hearing Uncle Albert, and I was like maybe 7 years old, and I loved it. I remember all the other kids on my block had like the Sesame Street box set records, but I had like rock and roll,
Yeah.
because I had an older brother who lived in the basement. He lived in a house, but he made the basement his room. And he had like your wall behind you.
Hmm.
It was full of 45s and albums. And I would just go down there. This was like late 60s, early 70s. And I would just go down there whenever he was in there. And I would flip through everything and just see that's actually how I discovered the Beatles. Believe it or not, the Beatles was more, I would say, visual at first with me than audio. Because even when he played the music, he had all the Beatles and stuff, but even when he played it was in the basement. So I never really heard it. But I discovered the Beatles going through his albums and just noticing like how cool like the album covers look or the picture sleeves on the 45s.
Hmm.
And I would go like, what's this? Oh, they look pretty cool, and stuff. And then there was one time when I was going to junior high, I got home I used to get home from school at about 3 o'clock. Then I'd watch a little TV before I did my homework. And I'm in Connecticut, so the East Coast. Back in those days in the early 70s, WABC Channel 7, they always had the 4:30 movie on, Monday through Friday.
Right.
And one time they put on A Hard Day's Night. And it said, I said, the Beatles, oh, those are the guys that I saw on the record albums
Uh-huh.
downstairs, not really hearing the music. It's like, oh, I got to watch this. And that was the first time that I really heard the music was from the Hard Day's Night movie. And I couldn't wait till the next day because that used to be a night, they had to finish the 4:30 movie by 6 o'clock so they could get eyewitness news on.
Right.
So they used to break it up in two parts because they'd have to add commercials too. So like even though Hard Day's Night is like a 2-hour movie, it would be in two parts. It would be part one because it was Monday through Friday.
Uh-huh.
Part one day. So I can't wait to the next day to see part two. And then it was after that actually seeing. That's how I heard the music for the first time. Was from watching that 4:30 movie. And then, boy, did I get into his records after that, boy. Let me tell you.
I mean, you didn't hear Beatles on the radio all the time?
Not really. I don't remember it. No. You know what? Because my brother, I mean, we're like talking 6, 7, and then by that I heard more McCartney because, like I said, they had Ram, they had Band on the Run. That's what I remember hearing. You know, um,
Was radio a big part of your life? Did you listen
not
to
early
radio a lot?
on. No,
Huh. Okay.
not like early on. Um, the only time that I would really hear radio is at a when the family went to the beach or something, you know, and my dad would put his station on, or you know,
Okay.
um, yeah. I honestly, I don't really. That's what sticks out to me is seeing that Hard Day's Night movie, and maybe that's seeing them do the songs. I think that's what like made it click in me.
Sure.
You know, because I really I don't want like I know my brother had all the records, but I don't remember hearing them, and I don't remember hearing them on the radio. I never really listened to the radio, so
Yeah.
it's odd. It's odd how it came about.
I was very fortunate, because I was extremely young when the Beatles exploded here in 1964, but it was wall to wall Beatles all the time on
Yeah,
top 40 radio,
I can imagine.
especially that first half of 1964 when they completely dominated the charts. But I can remember, walking down the street with the transistor radio glued to my ear and listening to top 40 radio and hearing the hits
Yeah,
at the time. And so, those were great times to hear the hits back then and in the 70s too.
yeah,
The solo Beatles did so well, especially McCartney, that yeah, radio was such a massive influence on me in my musical taste, Beatles and top 40 in particular.
yeah.
But yeah, and it's really interesting, this love for Ram now. And
Right.
because once in a while I will try to watch other YouTube channels, people who do a lot of Beatles stuff when they do their countdowns of their favorite McCartney albums of all time. And for
Yeah.
many of them, Ram is number one now. And I never used to hear people say that.
No,
It was always
no.
Band on the Run was number one. And even for a time, when Tug of War came out, a lot of people thought that could be his best album. But, it's really grown in stature, Ram, all these years. And we discuss this all the time on my podcast shows. And we are living in a time where a lot of people like the simpler production, not slick, not polished. A lot of what
Yeah,
McCartney did in the 70s, especially even before Been on the Run, is just so down home,
it's
you
raw.
know,
Yeah,
on the farm, finger picking the acoustic stuff and loving Heart of the Country and
yeah.
Every Night and Some People Never Know and Country Dreamer and those songs. Um, and at the same time, there was this element of McCartney where he was just doing what he felt like doing, not necessarily trying to be or striving for a number one album. I'm sure he always was concerned about it. But once he got into the whole Band on the Run period and he was doing so well, I think he wanted to keep it at that level. He knew he had a good thing going. It was a well-oiled machine, Wings. They had a distinctive sound. Before that, he was just, feeling himself out, trying
I
to
think so.
to figure out what to do. And the first McCartney album and Wildlife are albums that are so completely very bare and raw. You know, Ram has a little bit more polish to it, it's much more structured, some orchestration like on Uncle Albert. and
Right. Long
backseat
hair
of my
lady
car.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but there's a quirky quality that goes with Ram, the goofiness of Smile Away and Three Legs, that kind of thing. And to do something
Yeah.
like Uncle Albert, where you're going through all these different tempo changes, and it's a good fun sing-along song, kind of like in the Yellow Submarine vein in a
Yeah.
way. And Monkberry Moon Delight, which is a tour de force vocally. Have you ever done Monkberry Moon Delight live?
Yeah. That's
How do you
we've
do
done
it?
we've well, I dropped the vocal down a half step
Uh-huh.
only a half step. But that's actually one of like of all the I think that's still on YouTube. A lot of thumbs up on that.
Yeah.
If I was alone, I could do it,
Uh,
well, maybe not right now.
how do you have a voice after doing that? Constant screaming.
I position it in the set list uh, accordingly. It will either close out a set where I can rest, or something really mellow will follow where I don't have to really straight it.
Uh-huh.
Or yeah, I work those things around, you know, so I don't burn out so easily. You have to.
Mm.
He's got so many different voices, and you know, and you've got to do them. You've just got to do them. You know, I'm down. I've done that,
Yeah.
and I in G's. That's like the original key. And I don't know. Some of them I could just belt out and without ripping my vocal cords. And if you take it from the gut and not from the throat, it works out okay.
Mm.
But it's hard because like that. Then I'll run into something like I saw her standing there. Not a lot of screaming and that idiot. It's nothing like that. It's more of an even tone, but he's got like sandpaper in his throat almost. So you kind of have to sing like, well, you were just 17. Well, you know what I mean. Like you're not screaming it, but you still have to put some kind of a roughness to your
Uh-huh.
voice that he has on some of those songs, just singing normally.
Mm.
And those are the ones that kind of get my throat more than the ones just screaming out. Because I go, right now, and I'll feel fine. I feel fine. You see that? Made you smile. But
Yeah.
you just 17. It's because you're almost like holding back what your
Uh-huh.
voice wants to give out, and that irritates you sometimes. But there's a nice long answer for you.
Yeah. Hey, look, when Paul does his concerts, I kind of try to pay attention to when he's doing a really tough song to sing, and how does he handle that, and what does he follow it with? Something that's a lot easier
Yeah,
on the vocal cords. I
yeah,
try to pay
yeah,
attention to that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But it's interesting, those three albums that you mentioned, because to me, Flaming Pie and Chaos and Creation are the later albums where he had
yeah.
more of an older sound, traditional sound.
I think that's might be what it is. Kind of a throwback, because it
Uh-huh.
also brings you back. It's a new album, but it brings you back to maybe a different time or a different point in your life uh, that you have good memories of. So you take that in it, and it just adds to your good feeling to what you're listening to. And it's just many factors come in. I think as far as really getting into an album, more than just like what it might sound like, just what it brings out of you. If one of the newer albums brings back old memories because it sounds like something from a long time ago, it's a mix of something new, which you want to hear too, because I don't want every McCartney album to sound like the Beatles. I
Mm.
don't, you know. And sometimes I'll see reviews on YouTube or something, and of a solo album. And I think sometimes he gets a bad rap because it's like, oh, it's like nothing like the Beatles or something, and you just think after all this time, you'd stop comparing to his new album to a Beatles song or to Band on the Run and just take each one because he's always changing.
Right.
He's got so many styles, It's like maybe he wants to sound different on this album. Check out his new style. Check out how many different ways he sounds great besides the Beatles people,
Right.
And,
Not only that, but I think sometimes you can't win because if Paul just kept on repeating the same formula over and over and over again, some people would start to find it boring, mix it up a little bit,
of course.
instead of being so repetitious. So yeah, that's why I really like when he tries to work with different producers. But sometimes I think the more conservative fans would prefer for him to do something more like Chaos and Creation.
Mhm.
Chaos and Creation is such a simply produced album. It does harken back to like the first McCartney album. And it's almost like I don't want to say demos because demos to some people, it's like it's not finished, but there are certain things like perfect demos or polished demos that are good enough to come out. Like I used to hear about Carole King's Tapestry, which is
Yeah.
such a masterpiece of an album, but it's not this huge production. It's very simply produced with her and a band, nothing really elaborate, and it works on that level. And Chaos and Creation is very much like that.
Look at English Tea.
Uh-huh.
English Tea is just so simple,
Hmm.
but it just, I mean, that totally takes me back to something like Martha My Dear or something out of the White Album, but it's so effective with such a simple little production. It does just what it needs to get to your heart, without overdoing it.
With the actual chords and the progressions there and what's happening on the piano, English Tea reminds me more of For No One than anything else.
Yeah. Same era, yeah.
Hmm.
There you go.
Okay, let's move on to bass lines. Your
Ah,
top three McCartney bass lines of all time. Not easy to pick. There's a lot of great ones.
wow.
So
Definitely Uncle Albert, because that's just so much fun to play. Because there's so many different. What is that supposed to be? Three different songs in one. Is that how that turned out? Three songs
right.
that he scrapped, and he put together. And I would say the slow part isn't that much fun to play because I mean for me I'm basically just on the D chord. We're so sorry, doom, doom. But when it picks up, when the tempo picks up, that's when it gets fun to play. And especially if you start hearing the audience start clapping along, then it gets. I wonder if I could. You can't see, but when the horns come on, the bass kind of starts doing like a slide. I don't know, maybe you could hear it, but wait, hands across the water. Wait. Oh, this one I'm thinking of. That's really fun to play. Hands across the sky. Like it starts up here and you're sliding like all the way down to that. I don't know if I can play it like an upright here. I can't. Hands across the water, hands across the sky. Like
Okay.
that. It's kind of you're kind of taking an elevator down, and then you're going right back to the hands across the water, water, hands across the, and then it gets into the country hold down kind of,
Right.
which is you're just doing that. And then it stops, and then you're going right back to something totally a different tempo. You know? Oh, go ahead, don't define me, you know. And it's just there's so much going on in that. That's the most fun. That might be number one. That might be my number one fun song to play.
Okay.
As far as bass lines, whether I could play it or not, that's one of my favorites. Well, we need two more. Jeez. Oh, Band on the Run is kind of like that, because that's another one that kind of starts out slow, and then it kicks in. That's definitely a favorite. And wow. I'll go to the Ram album with again with Eat at Home. I'm trying to really space it out to try to get something off like different albums, but those are the first ones that come to mind. Eat at Home. Let's eat at home. Come on, little lady. Lady, let's eat at home. Eat at home. Eat at home. It's kind of just like it's almost like something an electric guitar could do. It's almost like a nice bass solo through the whole thing. Whereas, as I mentioned before, the bass is usually in the background of everything else. But
well, you know what they say about Paul is that he plays the bass like a lead guitar very often. He comes up with counter melodies, which makes things very interesting if you can pick it out in your ears and you can hear it, and then you're hearing that simultaneously with the main melody.
yeah,
And it makes the song so much more interesting.
yeah.
You know,
I
Paul
think
seems
that's
to know when to keep things really simple to drive the song, and then he also knows, because this is something he learned in the Beatles, there are moments there when he knows to get more fancy on the bass and to come up with something, you know, like the bass line in the song Something is extraordinary. It's like a whole other song to itself, its own melody. And it just adds so much if you can zero in on just the bass line of Something.
You can even notice that with a lot of his live renditions of songs, like on record, the bass might sound kind of simple, and then you might hear him do it live, and he'll open it up a little bit sometimes and just make it a little bit more, as you say, fancy for the live.
Uh-huh.
Like I know with Jet, that's another. I love Jeff. I love the bass line for Jet. It's really driven, but it's just pretty much an A through the. You know, you're
Right.
you're doing just as I can almost remember the funny face. The keyboard solo, Jet. This is the record. That's where you do them. But I noticed live, we'll go. You know, like he'll add a little something in there to break up. I don't want to say monotony, but that's why I like.
I'm losing you a little bit with the audio. If you can
That's probably because the bass is cutting out.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm getting feedback right now. I'm gonna turn it down right now. Easy, brother. Okay.
Do you like sometimes when Paul really mixes the bass up real hot? Do you like a record that way?
Uh, it just catches my attention. Sometimes,
Come closer to the computer there so we
yeah,
can
I
hear you
just
better.
kind of got comfortable here. Uh, Not that I probably should, but sometimes I actually think about uh, that myself, especially if you're playing like the same song so many times, so many shows. Uh, After a while, you might, just to make it a little different for you for once, you might want to add a little thing in there. And I've done that sometimes, not emulating Paul, but I would just add something in as myself. It would still sound okay,
Hmm.
but what I put in, I'm not putting in something Paul put in. I'm putting in something that I might be hearing and thinking that maybe Paul, if he was going to add something in to a
You might
live version,
consider.
he might do this or something,
Yeah.
But that's like off. That's not something that I'm thinking about and planning. That's just something that's coming out in the middle, spur of the moment thing. So
Mm.
sometimes that happens, and I like doing. That's why I like doing this band, is because I know with a lot of Beatle bands. First of all, there's so many Beatle bands, and when I first started doing this to play and sing, I think my first thought was a Beatle band, but I wanted to come up with something that would separate me from all the other Beatle bands. So
Mm.
my original goal was to get three other guys that really look like the Beatles, and not just have a group of three guys that are going to put on wigs and have the instruments, and you know, like I really wanted a look-alike thing, and that never really happened. Um, and then when he went back on out on tour with Flowers in the Dirt, so that was what, 89, and he
Hmm.
started to get back into the touring on his own. uh, I started thinking about doing something solo. And I always had people tell me, nobody cares about the solo stuff. No, you can't, nobody's going to want to see like a Paul McCartney tribute band. But. And I was like, yeah, all right, I guess not. And then I went to see a Beatlemania type band, not Beatlemania, a Beatlemania type band where
Mm.
they wore the costumes of the eras. And this particular band, it might have been a version of the Abbey Road band. There's a few of those. But anyways, they were dressed, they're set, they were in the Abbey Road time period set. So that's late 60s. So they're dressed like they're on the cover, and they're doing a couple Abbey Road songs. And then they went into solo stuff. They went into Imagine, that John did
Hmm.
Imagine. The Paul did Jet. George did What Is Life. And visually, it threw me. I absolutely hated it because it didn't make any sense to me seeing like a Beatles era band performing songs done after the Beatles broke up. It just it bothered me. I was like, what are they doing? This is awful. Like why are they dressed like Abbey Road and they're doing songs, post Beatles songs? But the reaction the songs got from the audience was great.
Mm.
They applauded, they screamed, and I was like, oh, what? And then I started thinking, well, maybe people would like to hear the solo stuff live. Who's doing that right now?
Uh-huh.
Nobody that I could think of. So I think it was at that point in time that I decided, all right, I'm not going to stay in one period. I'm going to do Beatles this generation. I'm going to do Wings. I'm going to do solo. And I even jazz it up. I even at first thought of throwing some influences in there, like
Hmm.
an Elvis song, a Buddy Holly song, a
Hmm.
little Richard, maybe a Beatles Motown cover, and really just making it a variety of Paul McCartney, his songs, his Beatles songs, his influences. And that, I thought to myself, that's a true tribute to the guy.
Hmm.
And, no, I just kept at it. And it's worked. It didn't work out good at first because I was so excited about it that I would just like go out there and get a show before I was really ready, and
Hmm.
like now I hear some of those demos and oh my God, Ken, I'll never forget this. I had a demo from like my first band. And when you hear it for the first time, you're like, oh well, this is great. And I called one of the guys in the original cast of Beatlemania.
Uh,
If he's watching this, he knows which one he is. And I was like, hey, it's Mike Miller. Hey, hi, Mike. I'm like really doing this now. You are? Yeah. Yeah. You want to hear it? Playing like these demo songs on a boombox on the telephone. And he was like the nicest guy and stuff, he was probably thinking at the time, oh man, but he was like, hey, yeah, that's like really something. I would keep working at it, and,
right.
super nice guy, so down the road, like the longer you do this, it's definitely, if you keep at it, the better you get at it and the more confidence you get. And you look back at what you did before and it's like, oh man, what
Uh-huh.
was I thinking?
Hey,
But it's all a learning experience.
we all go through it.
Yeah,
If I listened back to the way I sounded when I first was on the radio in 1982, I probably wouldn't be able to listen
really.
for more than a minute.
Right. See, there you go.
You know,
Oh,
so yeah, I know what you're going through, but I'm kind of surprised that you had that initial reaction to that band because to me,
that's just me, my personal view.
yeah, I never, from the beginning that I started doing Beatles shows on the radio, on college radio, I mixed the group and the solo together, and it's like breathing out and breathing in. I didn't really see the difference between the group and the solo. It's a continuation of Nowhere Man's a John Lennon song with the Beatles. Mind Game is a John Lennon song on his own. They're both John Lennon songs.
Uh,
It's all one long thread, and it all makes sense to me. It's the same vocalists, their own compositions.
so maybe that's what
No,
they were thinking. I
yeah,
got a great reaction, like I
yeah.
said, but it threw me off. Like I don't know. That's just me, but it threw me off. Like I don't know, but it gave me the idea to do what I do though. So
Yeah.
if I didn't think like that, maybe I wouldn't have done it. I don't know.
Well, to me, we need more bands like One Sweet Dream that mixes it all together, you
Well,
know.
we need less COVID days so I can so I can get back out there, you know. But because I love to do it, and there's so much more music to add to it.
Yeah,
Sorry, this thing keeps turning around here. Okay.
the catalog is so massive. I mean, if you just did Paul's post Beatles, you have over 30 albums
Yeah,
to
and
pick
it wasn't
from.
like that when I first started. I
Yeah.
know.
And then once you add the Beatles stuff too, and once in a while I do notice that you do try to slip in, it may be a song that John sang lead to or George sang lead to, just to break it up a little bit.
Yeah, but he started to do that, or he's been doing that with
Well, only with tributes, really.
well,
And that
yeah,
I
yeah,
think the songs that he does that a lot of people associate with John are songs that he had a hand in writing,
yeah.
like A Day in the Life.
Mhm.
And in several years ago, he did say that he and John wrote Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, that they picked the words off the poster. I don't know how much Paul contributed, but I think, you know, in his mind, he is part writer of that song. It's another thing to
He
do
can
a
do whatever
tribute.
he wants.
Oh, I know. He
You know
doesn't
that.
he doesn't need a reason.
It's okay with me.
Yeah, but that's probably why he does what he does. I always thought in the back of my mind, the word, the song, the word
Love that.
was more of a collaboration between John and Paul. And Paul did perform the song live in Europe
Wasn't that incredible?
only.
With All You Need Is Love tagged on the end of it. Did you see that?
Um,
We might do that. I've already talked to the guys about doing that.
I have to think. I know I've seen performances. I think it was just the word alone. But there are certain
Wow.
songs that he'll do in Europe and he hasn't done here, like Come and Get It, for example, that kind of thing. But I think in Paul's mind, he's thinking, well, these are partly my songs too, you know,
True.
to lead off a concert with 8 days a week, which he wrote with John, you know, perfect example right there. He
Yeah.
also he started off the last few tours with The Hard Day's Night, which everybody tends to think of as being,
That's kind of 50-50. Well, yeah.
I don't, I like to think that the part that Paul sings, that bridge, I think that was him writing that,
Mm,
you know. And
yeah.
even in the new lyrics book that came out, he picks The Hard Day's Night as one of those songs,
Ah, okay.
you know. Anyway, so since we're mentioning live performances, what a perfect segue. You have
Oh,
to pick three songs that Paul has never done live before, even in the Beatles, that you would like to see him do live in concert now.
there's got to be a Ram song in there. Any Ram song.
Well,
Okay, Uncle
he
Albert,
has, yeah, Uncle Albert, he's never done live before, and
right?
that's a crime. That would be a real crowd pleaser, and people would sing along with that too, with hands
Yeah,
across the water
I
and all
think
that.
so. Yeah, that. Uh, do I love to see live? Take It Away from Tug of
Hmm.
War. I would love to see that live. Um, like the video to that, um, the performance video part to that even looks really cool when he's doing it live and
Yeah,
everybody's standing up and doing that. That
right.
song would rock if he did that live. Um, my number one, this might make you go, oh, really? Because I think it's a song that not too many people think of. I would love, oh my gosh, I would love to see him do live Hold Me Tight.
The Beatles Hold Me Tight or the Red Rose Speedway
Yes.
part?
Ah, right, he's with it. He
Uh,
did kind of like
I don't think he would pluck a song out of a medley and just do the one song.
right.
Okay, power cut. Here we go. Nothing else.
No, but I would love, especially with the group of guys that he's with, and I could just see Abe. You. I mean, they would have so much fun with that song. And if they could put something in it to extend it even like a little bit, because it's so short, you get so into it, and then it's like done. And that's a bass line that I love. So
Uh-huh.
many of the early bass lines are different versions of Lucille, Little Richard. Boom, 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 Lucille, boom, 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 feel so right now, boom, 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 hold me tight. Well, she was boom, 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 boom. There's so much Little Richard in that early stuff. Boy, do I love it.
I
It's
saw
so
her standing
raw.
there as like that with the
Oh
bass.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
That's Chuck Berry influence there.
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a lot of Chuck Berry. A lot of Chuck Berry.
No, but Paul did say I saw her standing there. The bass line was from I'm Talking About You from Chuck Berry.
It wasn't really. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. Boom, 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 boom,
that's
boom, 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 boom.
yep,
Yeah.
that's where he got it from.
Wow. Okay.
So I love your choices. I'm not going to argue with them. And
And
one of
I'll
the
probably
things
change my mind to another three when this is over.
that's
It,
hey,
it's it's like so hard.
I know. Take It Away is a great choice because one of the things I love the fact that he brought back Letting Go into the set list,
That was a nice
and that
surprise.
he had a horn section, a real horn
Wow, I know.
section, to play that song. And I'd love to hear a horn section for Take It Away. Be so appropriate. That would be a real good, and it was a hit.
It was.
Hopefully, a lot of people still know that song.
Yeah. I would love
Um,
to have a horn section. So like we've done that song, my band, but the brass part of that is done on the keyboard, and Tom, our keyboard player, does a great job at it. But it doesn't have that punch like the original brass section, like a real horn,
yeah.
like it's coming at you. There's a difference between that and going, But
For a
yeah,
for a
so
long time, I think that synthesizers, it's very difficult to duplicate a horn sound on the keyboards, on
I knew you were gonna
synthesizers.
say that. Yeah,
And you go back to a lot of the early Flowers in the Dirt tours, what Wix was doing, and it sounded so tinny. It wasn't like a real horn sound.
no,
It's
yeah,
very hard to capture
exactly.
that. I think they've gotten better through the years with synthesizers, but if you listen back to that time period, you know, we have a song like Got to Get You Into My Life, and you're listening and those are not real horns. You don't want to get
Yeah,
that feeling when you listen to it.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep, you're
Well,
absolutely right.
Mike, this has been great sharing, your opinions here about McCartney's catalog and
First
going.
time, long time. It's been a long time. It's been a long. Oh, I gotta stop this. Isn't there a Beatles song about anything that you could say or do? It's. I mean, it's just amazing. I have an 11-year-old son, and sometimes we'll just talk, and one of us will say something, and even him, he's like, that's could be that's a Beatles song, right? I'm like, oh yeah, it's just amazing what they've done,
Mhm.
both together and solo. They've really made an imprint on our culture. It's an amazing thing. Never grows old.
Yeah,
We
it's
do. But
there's so much music in the world that I love. I most people don't get to hear me talk about the non-Beatles stuff.
no, me
you know,
too.
but once you add the group and the solo catalog together, it's so colossal, it's so huge. There's so much great music that is at the heart and soul of who I am,
Yeah,
and the Beatles and Top 40 Radio, which I like to bring up, which introduced me to so many different genres, which the Beatles did too.
hmm
That gave me a taste for so many different styles of music, whether it's
exactly.
pop,
Yeah,
R&B, country,
yeah,
Indian music. It doesn't matter. I mean, to be hit with all this stuff at a young age, it made me a passionate music lover. And the Beatles are front and center of all of that.
yeah.
And I get to share that in all my shows, which is
It's
great.
great. You're blessed. You
I
really
am.
are. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would highly recommend that when things pick up and there are One Sweet Dream dates, that you check out the website, which I will have here in the
Please.
description box, and come and see this band. And yeah, you might see me there too as well.
Oh yeah.
Because I try to you know see the band when they're playing near us. And I guess we should disclose that
Hey,
my
in case you
stepson
don't know,
my stepson is your drummer.
can I tell
And
that story real quick? Do we have time?
sure.
Do we have a couple minutes?
Okay.
Yeah. Our drummer is Ken's stepson, Jeffrey DeSera. Now, Jeffrey's been playing the drums for what, since he was a baby,
Uh-huh.
practically. I first saw, I went to a Beatles convention, and
One of Charles Rosenay's conventions.
Charles Charles F. Rosenay's Beatle conventions from New England. This might have been Park Plaza, New Haven. I'm not sure. But I saw this drummer who he must have been about 7, Jeffrey,
Okay.
or
I
maybe a little,
well, Jeffrey was born
or
in
really, like really
1978.
young.
1978 he was born. So what was the year of this convention? I know about the
He was
sound alike, you know, show that the contest that you were in.
so what
That I
year
know
was?
about.
Oh, so that was so he
You
was like 12 or something. That was like 86 or something, maybe.
No, because you did the Traveling Wilburys, you did Handle with Care. So there had
That's
to have been
before
at
that.
least. No, the story I've been told is your band, you had a band that did Handle with Care. So that had to have been at least 1988 when the album came out. And
That was the
Jeffrey,
lip sync contest. Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
And Jeffrey came out as a little kid and he just sang Revolution.
yeah. Doing this, say you wanna
Yeah.
revel. But before that, I saw him, or maybe it was that show and something. Was he playing the drums at some point at a convention for
Well,
something?
at some point, but I think that at
Yeah,
that time, I don't think he played it. I'd have to go ask him. Let me go get him.
yeah. Well, anyways, I went to this convention and I saw, this really young boy playing the drums, and he was incredible.
Hmm.
And I said to myself at that time, if I ever, it was just when I first started to get noticed as McCartney. And I said, if I ever get a band, I want that kid to be in my band.
Hmm.
And then when the band first happened, not this band, my very first band, 90, late 90s, I think, I went to a convention. Maybe it was Stanford. I drove all the way to that convention to see if he would be there, because I
Wow.
said, I have a band now. I want that little kid that I saw play the drums, like whatever, 10 years ago or 8 years ago or whatever. Like, I bet he's going to be at that convention. And sure enough, he was. And it's your stepson, Jeffrey.
Hmm.
I met you guys after. I gave him a card that said Ram on it with 2 M's. And I said, you want to do it? He was like, yeah, yeah. And he's been kind of with me through it all since. And incredible. And nobody comes close to this day.
Well, I'm not saying this because I'm his dad or stepdad, but he's incredibly talented. He can play almost every instrument under the sun. He learns it all very quickly. He has amazing ears. When he's playing a drum part, if it's Ringo's drums, he knows exactly what Ringo's doing.
Exactly.
And he's left-handed too, as a drummer. So, he studies this stuff. He knows it really well. And, not everybody who goes and sees a Beatles tribute band is going to know when the drums are exactly like Ringo's or Paul's bass line is being copied note for note. Some of them will know. The
Yeah.
ones that do know, that study this stuff, they'll get a big kick out
Oh,
of
yeah.
Jeffrey's drumming. And certainly he listens to the solo music too. When I first became involved with my wife, his mother, he knew a lot of solo music by then. Didn't know all of
Mhm.
it. I've taught him a lot, but he's taught me a lot too of what Ringo's doing on drums, and
Yeah.
he can pick apart every instrument and tell you what he's hearing that
I
my
know. I
ears
know.
can't do. He's very gifted in that way. So yeah, if you get to see One Sweet Dream, zero in on my son. Pay attention to Mike too. But
Well, you can see him
listen to
on
the whole
YouTube.
video.
There's videos on there too.
Yeah,
You know,
on the website there are videos.
on the website and on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mike, this has been fun,
It
and
certainly has.
hopefully I'll see you on the concert stage very soon with One Sweet Dream. Stay in touch,
Thank you, Ken.
and thanks for being here, and thanks
You
to all
got
of
it.
you. Thanks to all of you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
That peace and love.
Peace and
Woo,
love.
yeah. Thanks, Ken.
Bye bye.